From sands of empire to pillars of reason, how ancient Greece rose from the ruins of giants. A hook and intro. Imagine a world where colossal empires commanded vast armies and built pyramids that touched the heavens, where ancient kings ruled over millions, their power absolute and their civilizations seemingly eternal. For millennia, this was the undisputed reality across the Near East and Africa. Mighty Egypt, with its divine pharaohs, stood as a beacon of stability for 3,000 years. And Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, birthed writing, law, and cities that astonished the ancient world. Their legacies were inscribed in stone, their might undeniable. But what if I told you that out of this world of giants, a seemingly insignificant collection of fragmented city-states, tucked away on a mountainous peninsula and scattered islands, would rise to challenge these titans and fundamentally reshape the course of human history? What if the true legacy of civilization was not solely in unyielding power and central authority, but in the chaotic, often violent, and fiercely independent spirit of a new people? This is the story of how ancient Greece, a civilization that defied the norms of its age, emerged from the shadow of monumental empires, navigated periods of devastating collapse, and forged a path that still echoes in our world today. For thousands of years, the great river valleys of the Nile and the Tigris and Euphrates had been the undisputed cradles of human civilization. These were places of immense agricultural bounty, where predictable floods or massive irrigation projects allowed for food surpluses that sustained burgeoning populations. With food came specialized labor, complex social hierarchies, and the earliest forms of writing and organized governance. These were the superpowers of their time, developing sophisticated systems of administration, law, and religion that would influence centuries of human development. They were the established order, the benchmarks of what a successful civilization should be. But the story of civilization is never static. It is a tale of constant flux, of rising and falling powers, of adaptation and transformation. Today, we will embark on a journey that begins with these foundational empires, traces the complex web of interactions across the ancient Mediterranean, and witnesses a catastrophic collapse that nearly erased memory itself. Then we will watch as, from the ashes of that forgotten age, the vibrant, argumentative, and fiercely innovative Greek civilization slowly, painstakingly came into being. This is a story of how geography shapes destiny, how adversity can forge greatness, and how a unique blend of internal innovation and external influence set a new trajectory for humanity. Our journey will reveal the interconnectedness of ancient Africa, the Near East, and Europe, showing how ideas and innovations flowed even amidst conflict. You will see how the very landscape of Greece, with its mountains and seas, pushed its people towards a radically different way of life and governance. And you will discover how their ultimate triumph over the largest empire the world had ever seen solidified their unique identity and left an indelible mark on the foundations of Western thought, government, and art. Prepare to witness the astonishing evolution from the sands of ancient empires to the marble pillars of reason. Historical context and setup. Before the Greeks carved their philosophies into marble and built their temples to democracy, the world was dominated by two magnificent giants: Egypt along the life-giving Nile and the diverse kingdoms of Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These were not just large settlements. They were intricate, sophisticated societies that had been flourishing for millennia, laying the very groundwork for what we call civilization. Ancient Egypt, nestled along the Nile, was a kingdom defined by continuity and a profound connection to its environment. The annual flooding of the Nile was a miracle, predictable and vital, depositing rich silt that made agriculture incredibly productive. This stable, reliable bounty allowed for a highly centralized state, where the pharaoh, seen as a living god, commanded immense power. For nearly 3,000 years, from its unification around 3100 BCE, Egypt maintained a largely consistent cultural and political identity. Its deserts and seas provided natural defenses, granting it a remarkable degree of isolation and internal stability. The pharaohs, like King Narmer, who unified Upper and Lower Egypt, ruled with absolute authority. Their administrative apparatus was vast, employing countless scribes to manage the kingdom's resources, record its history in hieroglyphs, and oversee monumental construction projects. The pyramids of the Old Kingdom, colossal tombs built for their divine rulers, stand as enduring testaments to Egypt's engineering prowess, organizational capacity, and deep-seated religious beliefs centered on the afterlife. Their cities, such as Memphis and Thebes, were bustling centers of trade, religious devotion, and political power. In stark contrast, Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, was a dynamic and often volatile tapestry of city-states and empires. Unlike the predictable Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were more capricious, prone to unpredictable and devastating floods. This, combined with Mesopotamia's open plains, meant its history was a constant cycle of innovation, conflict, and conquest. Here, the Sumerians, around the 4th millennium BCE, pioneered urban living, invented cuneiform writing for administrative and economic records, and built impressive ziggurats as temples to their gods. The drive for resources, land, and power fueled constant warfare between these independent city-states, leading to the rise of conquerors like Sargon of Akkad, who forged the world's first major empire around 2334 BCE. This Akkadian empire demonstrated the potential for large-scale political unification, but it too eventually succumbed to internal strife and external pressures. Later, Hammurabi of Babylon, around 1750 BCE, would codify a sophisticated system of laws, reflecting a society grappling with order and justice in a complex, multi-ethnic environment. Mesopotamia was a crucible of diverse cultures, each leaving its mark before being absorbed or superseded by the next dominant power. These two giants, Egypt and Mesopotamia, were not entirely isolated. Trade routes crisscrossed the Near East and connected them to each other, to Nubia to Egypt's south, and to the emerging cultures of Anatolia and the Levant. Goods, technologies, and even ideas flowed along these paths, setting the stage for a broader interconnected world. The Bronze Age, roughly from 3300 to 1200 BCE, saw the widespread use of bronze for tools and weapons, further accelerating urbanization, organized warfare, and the development of sophisticated trade networks across this expansive ancient world. Far to the west, nestled in the Aegean Sea, new civilizations were beginning to take shape. These were the Minoans, flourishing on the island of Crete, and the Mycenaeans, who would rise on mainland Greece. They represented a different trajectory, one rooted in maritime trade and intricate palace economies rather than vast riverine agriculture. The Minoans, from around 2700 BCE, built magnificent unfortified palaces like Knossos, adorned with vibrant frescoes depicting graceful figures and scenes of daily life. Their linear A script, still undeciphered, hints at a sophisticated administration managing an extensive seafaring empire that traded across the Aegean and eastern Mediterranean, deeply connected to Egypt and the Levant. The Mycenaeans, emerging on mainland Greece around 1600 BCE, were a stark contrast. While adopting much from Minoan culture, including their art and administration, they were a more militaristic, warrior-centric society. They built imposing fortified citadels like Mycenae, Turins, and Pylos, their massive walls a testament to their readiness for conflict. Their linear B script, deciphered in the mid-20th century, revealed a meticulous palace bureaucracy managing vast resources, reflecting a highly centralized economy. They were an integral part of the late Bronze Age trade network, exchanging goods like pottery, metals, and luxury items, but their dominance would be short-lived. These early Aegean civilizations formed a bridge between the ancient Near Eastern powers and the eventual rise of classical Greece. They absorbed influences, adapted technologies, and forged their own distinct identities, demonstrating the dynamic interplay of regional developments and interconnections in the ancient world. But their flourishing, like that of many other Bronze Age powers, was predicated on a delicate balance of trade, political stability, and resource management. A massive shock was coming, one that would plunge the entire Eastern Mediterranean into an unprecedented period of darkness and chaos. The story unfolds. The vibrant Bronze Age, with its interconnected empires and bustling trade routes, was a system built on complex dependencies. But around 1200 BCE, this intricate web began to unravel in a catastrophic event known as the Bronze Age collapse. Across the eastern Mediterranean, major civilizations fell. The mighty Hittite Empire in Anatolia vanished. Cities in the Levant were razed. Egypt itself, though surviving, was severely weakened, losing its grip on its empire. And in Greece, the flourishing Mycenaean civilization met a sudden, violent end. The causes of this widespread devastation are still debated, a historical mystery captivating scholars for centuries. Was it climate change triggering prolonged droughts and widespread famine? Was it massive population migrations, perhaps the enigmatic sea peoples who swept across the region, destroying cities and disrupting trade? Or perhaps internal rebellions, economic instability, or a systemic breakdown of interconnected trade and political systems? The most likely answer is a combination of these factors, creating a perfect storm that brought an end to an entire era. In Greece, the collapse was total and brutal. Mycenaean palaces were burned and abandoned. The sophisticated linear B script disappeared, and with it, literacy. Trade networks dissolved, populations plummeted, and complex political structures vanished. Greece entered a period of profound regression, often called the Dark Ages, lasting for over 3 centuries from approximately 1100 to 800 BCE. It was an era of diminished material culture, isolated communities, and a struggle for survival. For generations, the memory of the Mycenaean kings and their glorious palaces survived only in oral traditions, passed down through bards and poets. Yet, even in the darkest of times, the seeds of new growth can take root. The Greek Dark Ages were not merely a period of decline, they were a crucible slowly forging the foundations of a new society. Ironworking, a more accessible and abundant metal than bronze, gradually replaced the old metallurgy, making tools and weapons available to a wider segment of the population. Communities, though isolated, began to reestablish themselves, driven by necessity and a shared cultural heritage. A common language, a nascent pantheon of gods, and the epic tales of heroes like those recounted by the legendary poet Homer, whose Iliad and Odyssey would later define Greek identity. From this fragmented landscape, a new political entity slowly began to emerge, the polis or city-state. Unlike the sprawling empires of Egypt or Mesopotamia, the polis was an independent, autonomous community typically centered around a fortified town and its surrounding agricultural land. Driven by population growth, a renewed sense of community, and the need for organized defense, these polis started forming around the 8th century BCE. Each polis was a world unto itself, fiercely guarding its independence and developing its own unique political system. The mountainous, fragmented geography of Greece inherently discouraged the formation of a single, unified empire, instead fostering this patchwork of independent city-states. This geographical reality profoundly shaped Greek political thought and encouraged a diversity of governance structures. Athens, for example, embarked on a remarkable journey towards democracy, where citizens, though limited to freeborn adult males, participated directly in their government. Solon's reforms in the early 6th century BCE laid the groundwork, reducing debt slavery and broadening political participation. Cleisthenes, later in the same century, further cemented democratic institutions, organizing citizens into new tribal units based on geography rather than birth, breaking the power of old aristocratic clans. Meanwhile, Sparta, a powerful polis in the Peloponnese, developed a radically different system, a militaristic oligarchy. Its society was rigorously structured around military training and discipline from a young age, ensuring a professional army to control a large population of subjugated helots. The Spartan kings, alongside a council of elders and elected ephors, ruled with an iron fist, prioritizing order and military might above all else. This stark contrast between Athenian democracy and Spartan oligarchy exemplified the rich political experimentation that characterized the archaic and classical Greek periods. As Greece emerged from its dark ages, it once again looked outward. Population pressures and a hunger for new resources led to a massive wave of Greek colonization throughout the Mediterranean and Black Sea regions from the 8th to the 6th centuries BCE. New Greek cities sprang up from Sicily and southern Italy to the coasts of Anatolia and modern-day Ukraine, spreading Hellenic culture, language, and political models across a vast area. This colonization movement not only relieved internal pressures, but also fueled trade, enriching the Greek world and connecting it further to its ancient neighbors. Crucially, this period also saw renewed contact with the more established civilizations of the Near East. From the Phoenicians, a highly skilled maritime trading people from the Levant, the Greeks adopted and adapted the alphabet. This was a monumental innovation, far simpler than hieroglyphs or cuneiform, making literacy accessible to a wider population and revolutionizing record-keeping, communication, and the transmission of knowledge. Greek art and architecture, too, drew inspiration from Egyptian and Near Eastern models, transforming them into their own distinct styles. The defining moment for this re-emergent Greek civilization, however, came in the early 5th century BCE, when it faced an existential threat from the largest and most powerful empire the world had ever seen, the Persian Empire. The Persians, having swallowed up Mesopotamia, Egypt, and much of Anatolia, now cast their shadow over the Greek city-states. The Ionian Greek cities in Anatolia revolted against Persian rule, seeking aid from mainland Greece. Athens, a rising naval power, responded, sparking the wrath of the Persian king Darius I. The first Persian invasion came in 490 BCE, culminating in the Battle of Marathon. Against overwhelming odds, the Athenian hoplites, citizen soldiers fighting in a dense phalanx formation, decisively defeated the Persian forces. This victory, a stunning upset, sent shockwaves across the ancient world. It proved that a disciplined citizen army, fighting for its homeland, could stand against an imperial juggernaut. 10 years later, in 480 BCE, Darius's son, Xerxes I, launched an even larger invasion, commanding an army and navy of unprecedented scale. The fate of Greece and perhaps Western civilization hung in the balance. The Greek city-states, despite their constant rivalries, recognized the gravity of the threat and for a brief, crucial period united. A small force of Spartans led by King Leonidas made a legendary stand at the Pass of Thermopylae, sacrificing themselves to delay the Persian advance and allow the rest of Greece to prepare. The decisive naval Battle of Salamis followed, where the smaller, more agile Athenian fleet, led by the brilliant strategist Themistocles, lured the massive Persian navy into a narrow strait and utterly decimated it. This victory crippled Persian sea power and left their land army vulnerable. The next year, 479 BCE, the combined Greek forces delivered the final blow to the Persian land army at the Battle of Plataea. The Persian threat was repelled, and the Greek city-states had, against all expectations, preserved their freedom and their unique way of life. The Persian Wars were a watershed moment. They solidified a pan-Hellenic identity among the diverse Greek city-states, proving that despite their differences, they shared a common culture worth fighting for. The victories ushered in the Golden Age of Athens, a period of unparalleled flourishing in democracy, philosophy, art, and drama. But this Golden Age also brought new challenges. Athens, leveraging its naval power and the prestige of victory, transformed the Delian League, an anti-Persian alliance, into a de facto Athenian empire, extracting tribute from its allies. This Athenian dominance inevitably led to conflict with its great rival, Sparta, and its Peloponnesian League. The Peloponnesian War, lasting from 431 to 404 BCE, was a brutal and devastating conflict that tore the Greek world apart. It weakened the city-states, eroded their resources, and ultimately left them vulnerable to external powers. Though Sparta emerged victorious, the war left Greece exhausted and politically fractured, marking the end of its classical flourishing and setting the stage for the rise of a new power from the north, Macedon. Impact and legacy. The journey from the river valleys to the marble temples of Greece was a winding and often violent one, but its impact reverberated through history, shaping the very foundations of the world we inhabit today. The immediate outcome of the Persian Wars was a massive surge of confidence and creativity in Greece, particularly in Athens. This was the era of Pericles, Sophocles, Euripides, and the construction of the Parthenon. Athenian democracy reached its zenith, and philosophical inquiry blossomed, challenging conventional wisdom and seeking rational explanations for the cosmos and human existence. But the long-term legacy extends far beyond the immediate aftermath of war. The political experiments of the Greek city-states, especially Athenian democracy, laid crucial groundwork for Western political thought. The very idea of citizens participating in their own governance, of laws being debated and decided by a public assembly, was revolutionary. Though limited in its inclusivity, it presented an alternative to the monarchies and empires that had dominated the world for so long. The concepts of justice, equality before the law, and the rule of reason were first articulated and debated in the Athenian agora. Greek philosophy, born from the inquisitive spirit of thinkers like Thales, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, fundamentally changed how humans understood themselves and the world. Instead of relying solely on myth and divine intervention, they sought rational explanations, pioneering fields like logic, ethics, metaphysics, and political science. Their questions about truth, morality, and the ideal society continue to inspire and challenge thinkers even today. In science and mathematics, the Greeks made astonishing strides. Euclid laid the foundations of geometry, Archimedes made breakthroughs in physics and engineering, and Hippocrates established the ethical principles of medicine. Their advancements weren't just theoretical. They influenced engineering, navigation, and even the astronomical observations that built upon earlier Mesopotamian knowledge. The impact on art and architecture was equally profound. Greek sculpture, evolving from rigid archaic forms to the idealized realism of the classical period, sought to capture the perfection of the human form, influencing Western art for millennia. Their architectural principles, particularly the orders of columns Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian, provided a vocabulary that would be adopted and adapted by the Romans and continue to adorn public buildings across the globe. Even the Roman Empire, which eventually superseded the Hellenistic kingdoms that arose after Alexander the Great, was deeply indebted to Greek culture. Roman law, governance, literature, and art all borrowed heavily from Greek precedents. The Hellenistic period, a consequence of Alexander's conquests, spread Greek language. Koine Greek became the lingua franca, culture, and administrative practices across a vast empire encompassing Egypt, the Near East, and parts of Asia. Alexandria in Egypt, founded by Alexander, became a major hub of Hellenistic learning and trade, housing the famous Library of Alexandria. This period was a crucial bridge, a grand synthesis of Greek and Eastern traditions that profoundly shaped the Afro-Eurasian world and laid the groundwork for future empires and cultural exchanges, including the spread of Christianity. Without the unique trajectory of ancient Greece, our world would be profoundly different. Would we have the same concepts of individual rights or civic duty? Would scientific inquiry be as deeply rooted in rational investigation? Would our artistic and literary traditions have taken the same form? These are questions that highlight the immense, enduring legacy of a civilization that rose from the shadow of giants, endured a dark age, and then, through sheer human ingenuity and a fervent desire for freedom and knowledge, created a legacy that continues to define us. Reflections and lessons. The grand narrative of civilizations, from the ancient river valleys to the rise of Greece, offers profound insights into human nature, power, and societal evolution. What can we learn from these millennia of change, triumph, and collapse? First, the power of geography. How did the predictable floods of the Nile foster stability and a centralized state, while Mesopotamia's unpredictable rivers and open plains led to cycles of conquest and adaptation? How did Greece's fragmented landscape lead to independent city-states rather than a single empire? These contrasting paths remind us that while humans exert agency, the environment plays a pivotal role in shaping societal structures and worldviews. Second, the fragility of even the most powerful civilizations. The Bronze Age collapse demonstrated that even highly interconnected and seemingly stable empires can unravel under a confluence of environmental, social, and political pressures. It reminds us that no civilization, however mighty, is immune to collapse, and that resilience often lies in adaptation and the willingness to rebuild from scratch. Third, the enduring human drive for innovation and progress. From the invention of writing in Sumer to the development of democracy in Athens, these periods show humanity constantly striving to understand, organize, and improve its world. What was it about these specific moments and places that allowed such groundbreaking innovations to take root and flourish? Fourth, the double-edged sword of conflict. While warfare brought immense destruction, it also sometimes acted as a crucible, forging new identities and catalyzing technological and organizational advancements. The Persian Wars, for example, united the Greeks and sparked their golden age, but the Peloponnesian War ultimately weakened them. How do societies navigate the destructive and constructive aspects of conflict? Fifth, the importance of cultural exchange. The flow of ideas, technologies, and artistic styles from Egypt and Mesopotamia to the Aegean and then to Greece highlights the interconnectedness of human development. No civilization truly develops in isolation. How do we ensure that cultural exchange enriches rather than homogenizes? Here are some questions for you to ponder. How do the challenges faced by ancient river valley civilizations in managing water resources compare to modern environmental challenges? Beyond political systems, what are some key cultural differences between the long-lasting Egyptian civilization and the more dynamic Mesopotamian ones? What can the Greek experience of overcoming overwhelming imperial power teach us about resilience and the importance of self-determination? How did the adoption of the Phoenician alphabet fundamentally change Greek society, beyond just allowing for writing? Could a unified Greek empire have emerged earlier? And if so, would that have stifled or accelerated their unique cultural developments? Consider the role of heroes in shaping history, from pharaohs and conquerors to lawmakers and philosophers. Whose actions do you think had the most lasting impact in this period? Outro. Our journey through the ancient world has taken us from the fertile river valleys of Egypt and Mesopotamia, where civilization first blossomed, to the rugged coastlines of Greece, where a new intellectual and political paradigm was forged. We have witnessed the rise of mighty empires, the devastation of a widespread collapse, and the slow, arduous rebirth of a culture that would profoundly shape our understanding of democracy, philosophy, and art. The story of these civilizations is a testament to humanity's enduring capacity for innovation, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. The echoes of these ancient worlds are not confined to history books. They resonate in the halls of our governments, in the principles of our laws, and in the very questions we ask about our place in the universe. Understanding their triumphs and their failures offers invaluable lessons for our own complex times. If you found this exploration fascinating, you might also be interested in these related historical journeys. The rise and fall of the Persian Empire. Delve deeper into the empire that challenged Greece, a vast and sophisticated realm that linked three continents and left an indelible mark on the Near East. The legacy of Alexander the Great. Discover how one man's meteoric conquests fundamentally reshaped the ancient world, creating the Hellenistic age and spreading Greek culture from Egypt to India. Ancient Nubia and its relationship with Egypt. Uncover the rich history of a powerful African civilization that often rivaled and sometimes ruled its northern neighbor, demonstrating Africa's pivotal role in early world history. Join us next time as we continue to unravel the intricate tapestry of human history, exploring the pivotal moments and powerful narratives that have shaped our world. Thank you for watching, and remember, history is not just a collection of facts, it is the grand story of us.